Your Ford's engine is quietly wearing itself out because of habits you probably do every single week. I'm not talking about obvious abuse like ignoring warning lights for months or never changing your oil. I'm talking about small, everyday decisions that feel completely normal but are slowly destroying internal components. I've been a Ford technician for over 15 years, and I see the same engines come through my bay with the same preventable damage over and over again. Today, we're covering 7 mistakes that are secretly wrecking your Ford's engine right now. Mistake number 3 has sent more EcoBoost engines to the machine shop than almost anything else I've seen. And mistake number 1 is something almost every single Ford owner does without ever realizing the damage it causes. Let's get into it. Mistake number 7, trusting the oil life monitor without thinking about how you actually drive. That percentage on your dashboard telling you how much oil life remains feels precise, almost scientific. Owners see it sitting at 40% and assume everything is fine. But the oil life monitor is calculating an estimate based on engine temperature, RPM, and runtime. It has no idea whether you're doing gentle highway commuting or short stop-and-go trips through town every single day. Here's the problem. Short trips are brutal on engine oil. If most of your driving consists of 5 or 10-minute trips to the store, school pickup, or a nearby office, your engine rarely reaches full operating temperature long enough to burn off condensation and fuel vapor that contaminate the oil. That moisture and unburned fuel mix into the oil, diluting it and reducing its ability to protect bearings and cylinder walls. The oil life monitor doesn't fully account for this kind of driving pattern. It might tell you that you have 35% oil life remaining when the oil has actually degraded far more than that number suggests. I've pulled oil samples from trucks showing 40% on the monitor that were already dark, diluted, and losing viscosity. Meanwhile, that same oil in a truck that's driven mostly highway miles at consistent temperature would still be in solid shape at that same percentage. The fix is simple. If most of your driving is short trips under 15 minutes, or if you tow frequently, or if you live somewhere with extreme heat or cold, change your oil based on mileage or time intervals rather than waiting for the monitor to hit 0. A good rule for severe driving conditions is every 5,000 miles or 6 months, whichever comes first, regardless of what the percentage says. For EcoBoost engines specifically, because they run direct injection and turbocharging, oil degrades faster under stress than in a naturally aspirated engine. Don't let a dashboard estimate override common sense about how you actually use your truck. Mistake number 6, running the wrong octane fuel in a turbocharged EcoBoost engine. This one costs owners money twice, once at the pump and again in the repair bay. A lot of Ford owners assume that because their truck runs fine on regular 87 octane, that's the fuel they should always use to save a few cents per gallon. But EcoBoost engines are turbocharged and rely on precise ignition timing to make their power and torque numbers. When you run lower octane fuel than the engine was tuned for underload, particularly while towing or climbing grades, you increase the risk of engine knock, which is uncontrolled premature combustion inside the cylinder. Modern engine computers are smart. They detect knock-through sensors and automatically retard ignition timing to protect the engine. That sounds like a safety net, and it is, but it comes at a cost. Retarded timing means reduced power, increased combustion temperatures, and inefficient fuel burn. Over time, running low-octane fuel underload repeatedly causes the computer to run in this protective, detuned state more often than it should, and that inefficient combustion accelerates carbon buildup on piston tops and intake valves. I have seen 3.5-liter EcoBoost trucks come in with rough idle and hesitation. And after checking the fuel logs and driving history, the root cause was owners consistently towing heavy trailers on regular fuel instead of the mid-grade or premium Ford recommends for those higher engines under load. Check your owner's manual specifically for towing and heavy load fuel recommendations. Many EcoBoost models call for 87 octane under normal light driving, but recommend a higher octane, often 91 or above, when towing near maximum capacity. Using premium fuel during towing season is not marketing nonsense. It genuinely protects your engine from the added stress of pulling heavy loads. The extra cost per tank is minor compared to a carbon cleaning service or, in severe cases, piston and ring damage from sustained knock. Mistake number 5, continuing to drive on a misfire code instead of addressing it immediately. This is one of the most damaging things I see Ford owners do. And it happens because the truck often still drives. Just a little rough. A check engine light comes on, the truck seems to run fine or maybe has a slight hesitation, and the owner decides to keep driving for weeks or months because nothing seems seriously wrong. A misfire code, anything in the P0300 range, means one or more cylinders aren't combusting fuel properly. This could be caused by a failing spark plug, a bad ignition coil, a vacuum leak, or a fuel injector problem. In the short term, driving on a misfire feels like a minor inconvenience. In reality, unburned fuel is being dumped directly into that cylinder and washing down the cylinder walls, stripping away the protective oil film. That unburned fuel also travels into the exhaust system, where it superheats the catalytic converter far beyond its normal operating temperature. I've replaced catalytic converters on trucks where the root cause was a $40 spark plug that the owner ignored for 3 months. A catalytic converter replacement on a modern Ford can run anywhere from $1,200 to over $2,500 depending on the model, especially if it is an integrated unit built into the exhaust manifold, which many EcoBoost engines use. Beyond the converter, prolonged misfires can also damage the ignition coil pack associated with that cylinder and, in worst cases, contribute to piston ring wear from repeated fuel washing. The moment your check engine light comes on with a rough running condition, get it scanned. Most auto parts stores will pull the code for free. If it's a misfire code, address it within days, not months. What might be a simple spark plug or coil replacement costing under $200 can turn into a multi-thousand-dollar exhaust and engine repair if you keep driving on it. Mistake number 4, mixing coolant types or topping off with whatever is available. Coolant seems like one of those fluids that shouldn't matter much as long as there's liquid in the radiator, right? That assumption destroys cooling systems and eventually engines. Ford vehicles use specific coolant formulations, and the two most common are the orange-colored motorcraft coolant used in many trucks and the gold or yellow-colored coolant used in other models. These aren't interchangeable and they definitely shouldn't be mixed. Different coolant types use different corrosion inhibitor packages. When you mix an old technology coolant with a newer organic acid technology coolant, the different chemical additives can react with each other and break down, forming a thick, sludge-like substance inside the cooling system. I've pulled radiators apart and found this gel-like buildup clogging narrow passages, restricting coolant flow through the radiator core and the small channels around the cylinder heads. When coolant flow is restricted, you get localized hotspots inside the engine block, and those hotspots accelerate head gasket failure and, in aluminum block engines, can cause warping. The mistake usually happens innocently. An owner notices the coolant reservoir is a little low, and instead of checking what type their truck actually requires, they grab whatever coolant is on the shelf at the auto parts store, or worse, top it off with plain water in an emergency and forget to properly flush and refill with the correct mixture afterward. Always check your owner's manual or the coolant reservoir cap itself, which often specifies the coolant type. If you're ever unsure what's currently in your system, the safest move is a complete coolant flush using the manufacturer-specified fluid rather than guessing and topping off. And never run straight water for an extended period, even in an emergency, because you lose the corrosion protection and the freeze and boil over protection that properly mixed coolant provides. Mistake number 3, hard acceleration immediately after a cold start. This is the one that has cost EcoBoost owners the most money in my shop. And it happens because modern engines start so smoothly that people forget they're still cold. Older engines used to idle rough and shake when cold, giving drivers an obvious signal to take it easy. Today's Fords fire up instantly and idle smoothly within seconds, so owners pull out of the driveway and get on the throttle almost immediately, especially if they're running late. Here's what's actually happening internally during those first 60 to 90 seconds. Engine oil is thick and hasn't fully circulated to every bearing surface, particularly in the turbocharger, which relies on a thin film of oil to keep its shaft spinning on tiny bearings at extremely high speeds, sometimes over 100,000 revolutions per minute under boost. When you demand full throttle and full boost pressure before that oil has properly reached and lubricated the turbo bearings, you're spinning that shaft at extreme speed with inadequate lubrication. This accelerates bearing wear dramatically. I've seen turbochargers on trucks with under 70,000 miles need replacement, and in nearly every case, When I talk to the owner about their driving habits, hard acceleration right after startup is a consistent theme. Turbocharger replacement typically runs between $1,500 and $2,500 depending on the model and whether it's a single or twin turbo setup. Beyond the turbo, cold hard acceleration also increases piston ring wear because the cylinder walls haven't reached optimal temperature and the metal hasn't fully expanded to its design tolerances, leading to increased blow-by and, over years of repeated abuse, higher oil consumption. The fix costs nothing and takes less than 2 minutes. After starting your truck, give it 30 to 60 seconds of easy idling, then drive gently, avoiding full throttle and heavy acceleration for the first mile or two until the temperature gauge starts moving off cold. Modern oil and modern engines don't need a long stationary warm-up like older vehicles did, but they absolutely need those first few minutes of gentle driving before you ask for full power. If this is opening your eyes to problems you didn't know you had, go ahead and hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because the next 2 mistakes are responsible for the most expensive repairs I see walk through my shop doors. Mistake number 2, delaying spark plug replacement on EcoBoost engines well past the recommended interval. This mistake doesn't just cause a rough running engine, it can lead to one of the most expensive and frustrating repair situations a Ford owner will ever face. Turbocharged EcoBoost engines run hotter combustion chamber temperatures than naturally aspirated engines because of the added boost pressure. This means spark plugs in these engines wear out faster and experience more thermal stress than plugs in a standard engine. Ford specifies replacement intervals for these plugs, often around 60,000 to 100,000 miles, depending on the specific engine, but many owners either don't know this interval exists or assume spark plugs are a lifetime component because nobody talks about them anymore the way people used to with older vehicles. Here's where it gets expensive. When spark plugs are left in place for extremely long periods, especially in an aluminum cylinder head, the plug can begin to seize or corrode into the threads over time, particularly if there's any carbon or corrosion buildup around the plug's seating area. When a technician then tries to remove that plug during a much overdue replacement, the plug can snap, leaving the broken portion, or in worst cases, the entire electrode tip, stuck inside the cylinder head. On some Ford EcoBoost engines, this is a well-documented and dreaded problem. Extracting a broken spark plug can require special extraction tools, and if it goes poorly, it can mean pulling the cylinder head entirely to remove the damaged threads or broken fragment, turning what should have been a $300 spark plug service into a repair costing $2,000 or more, sometimes significantly higher depending on the extent of the damage. I have personally spent entire afternoons carefully extracting broken plug fragments from EcoBoost heads, and it's a stressful, time-consuming job even for an experienced technician. The solution is straightforward. Know your specific engine's spark plug interval and stick to it. Don't wait for a misfire or rough idle to prompt you into action, because by the time symptoms appear, those plugs have often been in place well past the point where removal is safe and easy. If your truck is approaching or has passed 60,000 miles and you're not certain when the plugs were last replaced, have them inspected proactively rather than waiting for a problem to force the issue. Mistake number 1, and this is the mistake nearly every single Ford owner is guilty of without realizing it: never addressing carbon buildup on intake valves in direct injection engines. Almost every modern Ford, from the EcoBoost lineup to many of the naturally aspirated engines, uses direct fuel injection, where fuel is sprayed directly into the combustion chamber rather than into the intake port ahead of the intake valve. This design improves fuel efficiency and power output, but it comes with a significant downside that most owners are never told about. In older port injection engines, fuel spraying across the back of the intake valves had a natural cleaning effect, washing away small deposits before they could build up. Direct injection engines don't get this benefit because fuel never touches the intake valves on its way into the cylinder. Instead, oil vapor from the engine's PCV system, along with combustion byproducts that make their way back through valve guides, slowly bake onto the back of those intake valves over time, forming hard carbon deposits. This happens gradually, over tens of thousands of miles, which is exactly why most owners never notice it happening until symptoms show up. As carbon builds up, it restricts airflow into the cylinder, and it can also disrupt the smooth, controlled flow pattern the engine's designers intended, which hurts fuel atomization and combustion efficiency. I've inspected intake valves with a borescope on Ford EcoBoost engines around 60,000 to 80,000 miles that were coated so heavily in hard carbon deposits that the effective opening of the valve was reduced by 30% or more. Owners in these situations typically describe a rough idle, hesitation on acceleration, reduced fuel economy, and sometimes intermittent misfire codes that don't point to any single obvious cause. The frustrating part is that there's no dashboard warning for this. There's no maintenance light that comes on to tell you carbon is accumulating. It's an invisible problem until it's bad enough to affect drivability, and even then, many owners chase spark plugs, coils, or sensors before anyone thinks to check the intake valves themselves. The fix, once carbon has built up significantly, is a service called walnut shell blasting or induction cleaning, where a technician removes the intake manifold and physically blasts the carbon off each valve using crushed walnut shell media, which is abrasive enough to remove the deposits without damaging the metal. This service typically runs between $400 and $800, depending on the engine and labor rates in your area. The better strategy is prevention. Using top-tier detergent gasoline, which most major brands provide, helps somewhat, along with occasional use of a quality intake valve cleaner additive designed for direct injection engines. Avoiding excessive idling and short trip-only driving, which we covered earlier, also reduces the rate of carbon accumulation, since those conditions produce more unburned byproducts in the first place. If your EcoBoost or direct injection Ford has crossed 60,000 miles and you've never had the intake valves inspected, it's worth having a technician take a look with a borescope during your next service visit. Catching moderate carbon buildup early with a cleaning service is far cheaper and easier than waiting until the engine is running rough and throwing codes. These 7 mistakes have one thing in common: none of them feel dangerous in the moment. Your truck still starts, still drives, still gets you where you're going. That's exactly why they're so damaging. The wear happens slowly, quietly in the background until one day you're facing a repair bill that could have been completely avoided with a little bit of knowledge and a few small changes to your habits. Take a look at your own driving patterns and maintenance history against this list. If you recognize yourself in 2 or 3 of these mistakes, don't panic, just start correcting them today. If you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me which one of these mistakes surprised you the most. Share this with any Ford owner you know who might be doing the same thing without realizing it. I'll see you in the next video.